Welcome to Conflict to Connection, the podcast that helps families navigate separation with compassion and understanding. I'm Mitch, a child consultant at Civilized Separations, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Bill and Bella. Together, we tackle tough conversations about divorce, co-parenting, and creating healthier family dynamics. Whether you're navigating a separation or just looking for better ways to connect, this podcast is here to guide you every step of the way. So, we have a few Q&A questions from some people online on our social media. And I was just going to run through a few of them with you and see what your answers would be then to our listeners. So the first one is from someone who's anonymous. They wanted to keep themselves anonymous. And they said, why do you recommend separation when it only harms the children?
Wow. Do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, separation per se doesn't hurt children. Obviously, it's not what they want. It's not a great thing. It's not so much the separation that's the problem from the children's point of view. It's more the atmosphere or the attitude or the state of mind of the parents that they are most affected by. So if you can separate in a harmonious way, you'll shield them to a large extent from the downsides or the various aspects that come with moving. Yes, you've got to go to a new school. Yes, you've got to get used to a new bedroom. Yes, you don't live next door to your friends. That's all difficult. But the thing that they're most concerned about is the world I live in a safe one? And the only way I can gauge that is by looking to see whether my mum and dad are in a good place. So actually, if you prioritise the quality of the parenting relationship, the other bits that are difficult but manageable don't become problematic in themselves.
And also, what does your life look like as a parent or as a human being or as an individual, as a grown-up? What does your life look like if you're staying with someone for what you think are the right reasons, but you're not happy? What kind of life is that, you know? Everyone deserves to be happy. And separation, although the stigma would sort of, point towards separation is a failure or something to feel shameful about, it shouldn't. It shouldn't at all. Separation and divorce shouldn't have the stigma on it that it has. It's brave to do something that's right for you and what's essentially going to be beneficial for the whole family, especially the children. Staying together, even though you're not happy, is not the answer.
Okay. And then we had a question from Paul Hutton, 1976, and he said, do you agree that children will always want a relationship with their parents as their blood, no matter how they've been in their lives or behaved?
I would say yes to that.
Yeah.
Yes. I think children are always going to feel biologically attached to their parents. You know, there's loads of research that goes into children who have been adopted. They grow up in their families and they have a fantastic life and they love their adopted parents and they feel, they've had opportunities, but they'll always be curious about their biological parents. They'll always want to know more about what happened. Why is it they couldn't stay in that family? What is the reason that they were adopted into another family? They'll always be so fascinated. And some people in their 60s will then go and look for their biological parents because they just have so many questions. So yes, I would say to that question, children are always by blood going to want some kind of relationship with their parents.
Almost to the point where children sometimes keep going back to someone who's dangerous, such as the powerful urge to kind of connect with your blood to your own disadvantage. You keep getting hurt. So it is a very powerful drive. And yeah, I agree. They will always be interested. And they always want to know, what do you, as my biological parent, think of me? Because I have an innate sense that your duty to look after me is something I want to test. I want to see, is it there?
Yeah.
Sometimes that makes for difficult behaviour, but it's ultimately, do I matter enough for you to remain interested and caring about me even when I behave in a way that isn't nice?
It's always going to be a major driving force for them. And then another question that we've had from another anonymous person has said, what do you think of one lawyer, one couple arrangements?
I think in the context that we live in the UK, where the alternative is one lawyer for each person, one lawyer for both is a good idea. I do think that it's still within the legal context, and I think there are problems in terms of relationships in a legal context, whether the legal place is the best place to be resolving a relationship issue. So I definitely think it's an improvement on what's otherwise on offer. I think it's okay if you combine it with something more relational, something more therapeutic, something more based on nourishing and making the family function well. So in itself, it's good, but it needs to come in addition to other things.
Happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Another question that we've had from another anonymous person is, how do you think we can stop clients thinking collaborative law doesn't work and that the lawyer is the only one working in the interest of one client, not both?
I would say, in regards to the perception of collaborative law, I think the only reason why it hasn't worked, or, why clients might not feel have a lot of faith in it, is simply because it hasn't really finessed into something yet that everyone can grasp. So even just the perception of collaborative law is demonstration of lawyers wanting to shift things so that we can have more non-court dispute resolution. So we're all going in that direction. Everyone wants more amicable results for the families that they're working with. And we just need to, I suppose, really focus on what's missing and combining a legal process with a very large focus on relationships and becoming advocates for one another. Mediators becoming advocates for lawyers, lawyers becoming advocates for mediators, and having an appreciation for the relationship that exists in the family while we are taking them through an official process so that they can not be married anymore and they can actually divide their assets and they can have a conversation about children, where they go, that sort of thing. We just need to finesse it more, I think. We're actually not far. We're nearly there, I think. We've nearly finessed it into something.
I think there's an increased understanding that a variety of skills are required to help with the complexity of people separating. You need financial expertise, you need legal understanding, you need to understand what's happening to the children, you need to help parents create an amicable parenting relationship with each other, which sounds like you need lots of different people. And I think that's what's happened with collaborative law, is that every time you've come up against a new kind of challenge, you've brought another person in. The problem is that you end up with a cast of thousands. And the cultures of the various professions often clash to the disadvantage of the client. They're having to deal with the fact that these people are not in sync with each other. And sometimes the clients could be excused for feeling that actually all the different people they're talking to are saying different things. So I think the solution is really develop multi-skilled practitioners who can meet all those needs, rather than constantly bring in more and more people and deal with all the downsides of that, plus the expense, because each new person who comes into the mix has got to be paid, and then you've got to have meetings with each other to talk about where we're going, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like it's a cumbersome solution to is actually a more simply addressed problem, which is to make the people who work in that field more multi-skilled. And I don't think it's anything like as hard as everyone thinks. I think when the lawyers look at what's happening in a more therapeutic or relational environment, they feel unqualified. But actually, that's because they haven't really been exposed to the simple concepts that sit behind a more therapeutic approach. And why can't they train as child consultants? Why can't they do, all of the jobs? So really, it's like a solution to a perception that there's not sufficient skill. Well, I think, why don't we have high skill?
Does that answer the question? I can't remember what the question was.
No, that
originally.
both answers the question.
Okay, that's good.
So we've had a question from @KLVG. Can you provide some strategies for dealing with parental alienation? It's been 9 years and I'm not making any progress.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the child is saying, I don't want anything to do with one parent, it's often come from an initial sense of abandonment. It may not be what happened, but it might be how the child's perceived it. Like sometimes the relationship ends and someone moves out. And obviously that's something that's happened between the parents, but the children often feel, well, this person's no longer around. I can't help wondering whether that person's kind of left me and not really kind of thought twice. Of course, the parent who's left might be deeply concerned and interested in the child, but maybe the ability to convey that it's been compromised because maybe coming around is too problematic. Some people go away because they want to stop the child experiencing conflict, which is lovely. But at the same time, the child might also perceive that as, oh, okay, so obviously I don't matter that much because you've left and you seem fine. I mean, I don't know if you're okay or not, but I'm not hearing anything. So I do think that sometimes an acknowledgement from the estranged parent to the child about the parent perception they had of abandonment, even though maybe it wasn't, but if the child might have perceived it as such, that can really turn things around.
Can you give me an example of what that acknowledgement looks like?
Yes.
Just a
I remember once, a long time ago, a family where the children had become very alienated towards their father, and he had gone through arduous processes and basically gone to court and been given, the children were told they had to go with him, and he took them on holiday, and I don't think he managed it well, and one of the children later wrote him a letter saying, how unhappy they were about him and how he behaved. And the child said, even when we were there with you, you spent your whole time on the phone to your girlfriend. And the dad, in sort of typical fashion, said initially, it wasn't my girlfriend, it was actually a real estate agent, thinking that would make a difference from the child's point of view. And then right in the middle of his long response to this child's letter of unhappiness, he said, I'm sorry you feel I hurt you. And I said, why don't we get rid of everything else and just send that? But take you feel out. Yeah. I'm sorry I hurt you. And interestingly, it went straight through the kind of anti-dad filter that had been sort of constructed over time, because it was so unequivocally child-focused. It was so completely and absolutely unconditional. It wasn't, look, here's my position, feel for me, and I'll say something nice to you. It was just, here's a gift of acknowledgement of your experience. And on that occasion, it completely sort of melted the child who received the information. And then that spread to his brothers and sisters. And there was a very, very dramatic shift where suddenly he was no longer seen in that way. And interestingly, the other parent, the mum, had been exhausted because she was like 24/7 parent with these very upset children. So when they started having more to do with the dad, she was very happy to have the occasional weekend off. So she didn't want this to be occurring. She was obviously playing a role in the fact that it was, but so was he. So when they both kind of, were given the opportunity to kind of manage things differently, things changed.
Yeah, so that one kind of gift changed everything.
Yeah.
Okay, and thanks for joining us on Conflict to Connection. We hope today's episode gave you some fresh insights to help you navigate your journey. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe or follow the podcast and leave a review. For more resources and support, follow us at Civilized Separations on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. You can also visit our website at civilizedseparations.co.uk. See you next time, where we'll be exploring ways to build stronger connections for a brighter future.